Guys, we're about to miss out on something huge. Let me explain. All right, guys. So I'm of the opinion that we've been looking at this all wrong. The PSA 10 craze, the SGC Sit 10, Beckett 10, whatever it is, we've been so focused on buying gem mint cards that we've missed out on a lot of the charts that happen to be less desirable right now. So I'm going to make a prediction because I think the data is leading us that way. Right now, the cost of a PSA 9 is, usually it's somewhere close to raw for most cards, right? And I think that we have dug ourselves in such a hole focused on the 10s that we've forgotten about a lot of things. And I've brought this up on other channels that I have, and I'm just now getting around to putting more of the YouTube content out or different platforms. And I've talked about it briefly, but I think that I think it's worth talking about again. So over the next 10 to 20 years, there's going to be a lot of changes that happen, just like there were the past 20 to 30 with the junk wax era, then going through the 90s and 2000s, and here we are in a big rush again, both on trading cards and sports cards, and it seems to go in cycles, right? I mean, they're now being overprinted again. We're in the new junk wax era, some say, and I think that the value of these cards is very volatile. You look at Wander Franco, you look at some of the big name cards that were worth a fortune in PSA 10 when they first come out. Every year it's the same with, football rookies. There are certain players that come out. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon, get them graded as quickly as they can. And then what happens? The season starts or the season happens. All of a sudden the player isn't worth as much. The prices go through the floor. But then the next season they go up again. So it just goes up and down and up and down. And it's easy if you're a flipper or somebody making profits on those big gaps in the chart. However, my suggestion is especially from a collector standpoint, if you find yourself being a collector, especially the collector mindset more so than a flipper or a breaker or someone just trying to make short-term profit off of these cards, my suggestion is to be an investor. I differ with Jeff Wilson from Sports Card Investor on a few of the different things to do, especially when it comes to baseball specifically or the Pokemon cards. But I do think he's right on a few things as well. I think the long-term investment strategy for most collectors, it applies to everyone because whether you like it or not, people argue with, arguments happen all day long online. If you post any kind of content, there's always somebody out there to try to eat you up or start some kind of junk. The reality is at some point while you're collecting, you're either going to sell them or you're going to pass away and someone else is going to sell them. Either way, we all hope, whether you want to sell them now or not, that they are worth something long-term in the future. I'll cover that in some more on a different video. But think about the long-term investment from that standpoint and also from should you need it or should you decide to retire one day and this is not something you want to do, you want those cards to be worth as much as possible. Also, from a different perspective, if you are saving up for retirement, and you hear the phrase, don't put your eggs in one basket, right? So you want to diversify your portfolio, you want to use stocks, bonds, Roth IRA, whatever it is. People use coins, they use real estate, there's a ton of things to diversify your portfolio for what your retirement is going to be. One of the things that I've chosen to do for mine, and especially in the last few recent years, is to go into certain sports cards. Those being the GOATs, the generational players, the Bird Magic, the Kobe Jordan, and now it's going to be the Curry LeBron for basketball. I'll go into vintage baseball, going into Mays and Robinson, Ruth, Mantle. The guys that are going to bring value long term. Montana, Rice. There's a ton of generational players that are awesome, but not all of them are the same, right? There are different levels, different tiers of greatness, and different tiers of value when it comes to long-term investing. My big point here is that PSA 9, and I'm specifically talking about PSA because they're the extreme value holder in today's world, right? They're the king of card grading at the moment, whether you like them or not. I have a lot of issues with PSA, but like it or not, they are the top. PSA 9 at raw value is crazy. Not just in principle, not just because they're trying to have population control, but because PSA 9 sitting at raw value is insane for long term, because it should be more. And the charts show that it will be more. I don't think that we've seen PSA 9 or PSA 8 cards reach the peak value that they're going to reach. And as the 10s grow, or even if they fall, if you look at the charts, a 10 may go up and down by several $100 or $1,000, but a PSA 9 only trickles by a few dollars each. But the upside of a PSA 9 is huge. You could buy, a $20 PSA 9 card, the 10 being worth $400. Over time, that could be a $40 card. You could double your investment on a PSA 9, and no one would bat an eye. But fluctuation of several $100s on a PSA 10 is actually, it's more of a gamble, because you don't know what's going to happen. Either the hype is going to wear off and that player's value is going to go down. They could get a DUI. Something could happen. Their season could go short. They could get traded to the wrong team. There's 1,000 things that could happen to make that 10 sway in value so much that you've lost a fortune. Not to mention, if you try to liquidate short term, you're also having to unload cards on vendors who are offering 80% of comps. I don't even know if anybody offers 90% of comps anymore. That's crazy. If you watch my intro video, I actually put a unicorn being chased through a parking lot because he offered 90% comps. That's so rare these days for somebody to offer that. It is a unicorn, right? It just doesn't happen. So take your volatile PSA 10 for the most part. There are some exceptions. Some cards are going to be worth a fortune no matter how you look at it. It's just going to happen. Those are I think we all know what those are, right? Those are your Jordans, your big cards. PSA 9s, PSA 8s. A lot of 8s are going for less than $20, less than the cost of grading. At some point, those values will rise, right? And if you're going at it from an investment standpoint, especially from an investment standpoint, a $10 PSA 8 card in a Hall of Famer, depending on the Hall of Famer, I'm talking your Birds, your Magics, your Kobes, and so forth. Those cards being sold at that low, at an 8 or a 9, is crazy. And eventually the market will correct itself. Because as the grading, if the grading phase ever does take a dive, and it seems like PSA is trying to do a great job of reducing the amount of cards that they're grading, or at least extending the time that you get them back, which discourages people from sending so many. And then also the price increases, it changes, right? So even now with the changes in grading prices, those PSA 9 values are even higher. The cost-benefit analysis on those will tell you that it is a good investment for PSA 9 cards. I'm kind of screwing myself here because that's something that I've been doing personally is buying a lot of 9s that I think will long-term, based on the charts, they will continue to go up. And 20, 30 years from now, when I actually decide, hey, I want to liquidate these or I want to pass them on to my kids, these are ones that has a good chance of at least staying the value that I'd paid for them or increasing over time. So that's my recommendation here. Have we missed out on a huge opportunity because we're so obsessed with getting a 10? We miss out on the long-term investment opportunity of a PSA 9 or a PSA 8. And I'm fully on the boat that it is not all about value. It is not all about sales or cost or everything like that. Collecting side, I have some players that I'll probably never get my money back from them, but I love those players. And I love the teams, and I want to collect the cards because it's fun for me. It's a hobby. But at the same time, there are cards that I have that were valuable to grade, to return an investment on, that I don't want to keep, but they're hyped up right now, right? So those are some things to look at to say, hey, is this worth holding on to? Or are there certain players that are worth investing into in lower grades that over time that I will see a 20-30% increase? And don't put all your eggs in that basket as well, right? Because there are other ways to invest. Put some money in the stock market. If you researching that, know what you're doing. Comic books, trading cards, coins, paper money. There's in a previous video I mentioned all the things we collect. There are different ways to diversify your collecting portfolio that is just as powerful, and it's easy to liquidate. Should you actually need the money, it's a lot easier to liquidate a small piece of your collection than it is to try to liquidate something in your stocks. You get pay a broker. I mean, there's a whole mess with that. So keep that in mind. I think we have a huge, huge opportunity in front of us to invest in these grades before they go crazy. As 10s start to decrease, the amount of gem mints, the volatility of those are going to be crazy. We're not going to be able to predict it. We can look at charts as much as we want, but it's based on the hype cycle. Whatever's in the news, whatever happens during a certain game. And if we're playing a 60-day grading game or 60-day time period to grade a card from PSA, you will have went through 3 different hype cycles by the time you actually get your cards back. So even then you're gambling if you get a high grade, depending on what you could have sold it for raw. So yeah, that's another video, but keep in mind, this is an opportunity, and we should at least consider before it goes up. I think it will. I think that's where we're headed. Appreciate you guys so far. I'm just trying to get my YouTube channel going again. It takes some time to get videos back up, and I lost a lot of the stuff on the computer I had. So I can't post those up, so I'm trying to come out with some new episodes. I would appreciate if you guys would like the video or subscribe. It's going to take a while to get a following back on here. And also I have a few other channels on, there's one on TikTok. I put a lot of videos that, information, things that I want to say that aren't necessarily on YouTube or I won't put on YouTube. So make sure and check me out there. I appreciate it already. And eventually when I do get views and you guys are back to rewatching these, I appreciate you coming back and sharing them if possible. So thanks again. We'll catch you on the next one. See you guys.